The biggest thing that I hear from ADHDers is I don't want to do the Pomodoro technique. I don't want to do 10 to 40 minutes because I don't know if I'm going to get this focus back. You're in a flow state, right? And then you have to stop and break. What do we do about that?
You're getting into that flow state. We make these choices. And if I'm in flow writing, I won't stop, but I will. Here's a little brain hack. I'm working on my next book. In the flow, I'll go beyond the 25 minutes if I'm coming up with great content. But here's the hack. I'll stop in the middle of a sentence.
Oh.
Because when I pick it up again, I'll know exactly where to pick up and I'll have instant momentum.
Mind is blown.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Today I have Jim Kwik. And before I even tell you who he is, I have been reading Limitless, his book, for 6-7 years and rereading it, which is not common with ADHD. And I bought one for my husband because we can't share the book. And inadvertently, not only has Jim helped me as an ADHDer and an ADHD coach, but he has inadvertently helped my thousands of clients and listeners because we share some of his groundbreaking strategies with our community. So this is a real honor to have you here today, Jim.
So good to be here.
And for those of you who happen to not know Jim, you will know him after this, but he has a unique story. He had a childhood brain injury and he developed strategies to enhance mental performance. And for over 3 decades, he's been on a mission to empower individuals to unlock their true genius, empowering them to live a life of greater power, productivity, and purpose. And Jim is not like an overnight success. He has worked with students, tech mavens to CEOs, Hollywood celebrities, professional athletes, and his teaching resonate with a diverse audience. So it's not just individuals with ADHD, but people who are really looking to expand the neuroplasticity in their brain. So Jim has worked with industry giants like Google, Virgin, Nike, SpaceX, and yes, Richard Branson has ADHD for those listening, and 20th Century Fox, along with institutions like Harvard and the UN who have embraced Jim's methodology. So warm welcome to Successful with ADHD, Jim.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, everybody who's taking time to listen to this. I'm looking forward to pouring into everybody and giving them some tools that they could employ right away to level up their learning and their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Jim, I read your story several times, and your story really starts with the traumatic brain injury, right? Being called the boy with a broken brain in grade school. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you overcame a lot of the challenges from your TBI?
So yeah, my inspiration was my desperation. It's I realize, and I'm sure some of your community can relate to, going through challenge leads to change. Like going through certain struggles lead to strengths. When people see me live at events, and this past week I was on 3 continents in 1 week. We're in front of a good few 100,000 people a year. I do these demos if there's time where we're passing on a microphone and maybe 50 or 100 people will introduce themselves in the audience and I'll memorize their names or something like that, right? A mental feat. But I always tell people I don't do this to impress you. I really do this to express to you what's possible. Because the truth is, by and large, everyone listening could do that and a lot more. We just weren't taught. And some people automatically think there's just no way. And, we're doing an event that we wanted to give everyone a complimentary ticket to for 3 days. We're going to show you, we're actually roll up our sleeves and I'm going to show you how to read faster, improve your memory. We're going to pull people on stage and they'll introduce themselves and I'll show you how to remember their names and do things you never thought possible. I know it's possible because, as you mentioned, I had a traumatic brain injury when I was 5. I took a very bad fall in kindergarten class. I was knocked unconscious, rushed to the emergency room, bleeding and so on. But where it really showed up was in school. Before my parents said I was very energized, very playful, very curious, I just shut down and I had processing issues. Teachers would have to repeat themselves over and over again. A lot of times I still didn't understand. I would pretend to understand.
All right. You shake your head.
Yeah. I would have very bad focus, talk about attention, my attention. It was just non-existent. I had migraines every day at the age of 5 and 6. I had balance issues because of my brain injury. I remember it took me 3 years longer, Brooke, just to learn how to read. And at those, it was embarrassing being around. Remember in school, you pass around that book.
Yeah, it's the pop reading. Okay, Jim, you're next. And you don't even realize you're next. How much anxiety that is.
Yes. Even the average person, that would be anxiety. But for me, I really couldn't read. So when the book came to me, I would look at all the words and I would be so embarrassed. I would just pass the book to the next person, because I just couldn't read for 3 years. When I was 9 years old, this is where everything really changed. It's hard to tell if it's good or bad, but I was slowing down a class because I just didn't get the lesson. I was being teased pretty harshly. And a teacher came to my defense. She pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain. And I know she had really good intentions, but that label became my limit. Adults have to be very careful of their external words because they often become a child's internal words. So where did that manifest? Every time I did bad in school or wasn't picked for sports or whatever, which was all the time, I would say to myself, oh, 'cause I have the broken brain. Right. And so I struggled all through school, elementary, middle school, junior high, high school, every single day. And it's not because I was lazy. I would work at least 2 or 3 times harder than most people. But I still was barely passing. And at the age of 18, I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to meet a mentor who introduced me to brain science, ancient mnemonics, the speed reading, this mindset, and things changed. My grades improved dramatically, but then I started to tutor, and one of my very first students, get this, she read 30 books in 30 days. Now, not skim or scan, she read them because I was like quizzing her and stuff. And I wanted to find out not how. I taught her how, and we're going to teach this and this. We're doing something called the Limitless Learner Summit. And we wanted to gift your community a free virtual pass to it. But I want to know why. I mean, have you noticed like so many people know what to do, Brooke, but they don't do what they know?
Yeah.
Because common sense is not common practice. We know we should be doing certain things, but we just don't do it. So I wanted to find out
we don't know
why.
the how and the why. Yeah.
Yes. And I want to know her why. They drove her to read 30 books, a book a day, essentially. And the explanation I got was her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Doctors gave her mom only a couple months to live. And the books she was reading were books that saved her mom's life.
So she had major motivation.
Major purpose, major motivation. Without a reason, you won't get that result. And I wish her luck, prayers. 6 months goes by. I don't hear from her. And one day I get a call from this young lady and she's crying hysterically. And when she stops, I find out they're tears of joy that her mother not only survived, but is really getting better. The doctors don't know how or why. The doctors are calling it a miracle. But her mother attributed 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books. And in that moment, I got goosebumps saying that. I call them truth bumps. But in that moment, I realized that if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. That if knowledge is power, learning is our superpower. And it's a superpower we all have. And I also learned my mission, my personal dharma in life, which is building better, brighter brains, no brain left behind. And, my teachers would have been surprised if I read a book, much less wrote books. But it's one of those things where, I'm turning 51 this month. So I'm in it for over 32 years. Wow. And we have students, we have the largest online academy of accelerated learning, speed reading, memory, focus. And I realize that regardless of your age or your background, your career, your education level, your gender, your history, IQ, that all of us could make massive changes. And your brain is your number one wealth building asset. It's not like it was thousands of years ago where our value in society was more to be able to move like
physically.
Yeah, today it's our brain strength. That's not our muscle power today, it's our mind power. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. Yeah. And you can easily learn, like if people seen me with Branson or Oprah or Elon, people always want to know how we connected. We bonded over books, our love of reading. And it's so great because if somebody has decades of experience and they put it,
you can get it out of a book.
And you could read it in a few days. You can download decades in a days. Like
Yeah.
that's it. It's a
Yeah.
huge advantage.
Jim, if it's okay with you, what the teacher said was so powerful, of course. And it's amazing how the negatives just stick to us like Velcro, right? And then the positives just roll off of our brains like
Mm,
Teflon. And there was a client that I had who was 40, and his mental health practitioner said to him, "Your brain will not improve." And he came to me and like, "Dump your mental health practitioner
yeah.
now. Like, does this person not know about neuroplasticity?"
Yeah.
So the fact that you are sharing that at any age, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, you can change the way that your brain
Yeah.
operates, and you can rewire the negative messages and start thinking more positively, because we're all negatively biased, right? But then you have the story, a traumatic story like yours, and that's probably so hard to overcome. But with the practice and the expansion
Mm,
of the brain, which is like a muscle, it's possible. So for my ADHD audience,
hmm.
let's talk about some of the strategies that you
Okay.
used to reprogram your brain that you share with your community today.
Specific for ADHD or in general?
Just in general, like, how do you help people with memory? Because working memory is one of the biggest issues in executive dysfunction for people with ADHD.
Sure. Absolutely. So I take a two-prong approach. We teach people the process for memorizing things, and each process is different depending on their outcome. Like remembering names is different than remembering a language, than memorizing a TEDx talk that you want to give. So there's different tools that will get you to that result. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
if I was a sports coach and somebody says, I want to be better at sports, then that coach would say, well, what's sport specifically? Because there's different training based on different outcomes. That being said, we teach people the process of reading faster, improving their memory, and so on. That's the kind of like the software, but you also have to take care of the hardware, which is your brain, the brain itself. And you're saying, talking about neuroplasticity, we've discovered more about the human brain in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years combined. And I think a good conclusion that we've drawn is we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities. And I know this to be true just because, because of the community that we built, helping people level up their learning in life. But the starting point would be, I would say, you're taking care of your brain. So 1/3 of your brain, approximately, depending on what research you buy into, is predetermined by genetics and biology, but
Mm-hmm.
2/3 is in our influence and control. Now, some people believe with epigenetics that 100% is in our influence, but regardless, it's a large amount.
Nature and nurture.
Mm-hmm. So there are 10 things that would help us to have a better brain that would move the needle in that 2/3. I'll give it out kind of rapid fire. And what I would ask is maybe make this a little bit active. I'm talking to the person listening, and take notes. So you can write down these 10 things, and they're pretty common sense, and rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10. How much energy and effort have you put into this thing the past 7 days, if that makes sense? Because everybody wants to know what's the magic pill for better memory or whatever, or focus. It's not a pill, but there is a process, right? And there's always a method behind what looks like magic. And so I'll go through all 10 very quickly, and then just rate yourself 0 to 10. How much energy and effort, 10 being the best in the past week. So number one, a good brain diet. What you eat matters, especially for your gray matter. To that end, we have special guests coming on this 3-day event, and one of them is one of the world's top neuronutritionists. So he's going to talk about the best brain foods and the best supplements for cognitive health and cognitive performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of the nutrients. And some of those nutrients
Mm-hmm.
are different than the rest of your body. So some of my favorite brain foods are things like avocados, blueberries, I like to call them brain berries, broccoli. Now, everyone's a little bio-individual, depending on their food sensitivity. Some people could be allergic to certain things or their diet paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
If your diet allows eggs, the choline
Mm-hmm.
in eggs leads to acetylcholine, which is very important for cognitive health. Green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach. If your diet allows also, to get your omega-3s, your DHA, people get it from flax.
Especially for people with ADHD.
Very much so. Flax, salmon, sardines, turmeric. For me, it's a brain food. The active ingredient is curcumin, which is helps to lower systemic inflammation. Walnuts, high in vitamin E, neuroprotective. Dark chocolate, dark, not milk chocolate. Low sugar. Because on the other side, that would lower your score. 0 to 10 would be highly processed foods, all the additive like chemicals, high sugar. Those glucose spikes could wreak havoc on your brain, insulin resistance, all of that. So on a scale of 0 to 10, the past 7 days, 10 being the best, how well have you been feeding your brain? Number 2, killing ants affects your brain.
Yes, Dr. Amen.
Yes. So Dr. Amen scanned my brain a long time ago and put me on a protocol, and I scanned it again recent, and it was totally different. And ants, he termed killing ants automatic negative thoughts. That's what ANTS stands for. Your brain is like a supercomputer, and people come to me at events, see me do these demonstrations, and they're available to say, Jim, in the lobby, I'm just too old. I'm not smart enough.
It's a limited mindset, right?
Yes, very much so. And I always say the same thing. I say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limits, they're yours. Your brain is this incredible supercomputer, and your beliefs, your self-talk, your thoughts, they are the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. So 0 to 10, 10 being the best, how well are you mitigating those negative thoughts? And how encouraging are your thoughts? It's not that you have a negative thought and ruins your life. You eat a donut, it doesn't ruin your life. But if you ate that donut 50 times in a day, every single day, there would be a consequence. Right? Yeah. It's hard to create a positive life with a negative mind. And so your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how encouraging is it? Even if you find yourself saying, I don't have a great memory, being self-aware is the first part of making a transformation. So if you find yourself saying, I don't have a great memory, just add a little word like yet at the end. It just feels different. I don't have a great memory yet.
Yes. Right? And that's really that mindset shift, right? That all of us need to take before we have the tools, the other tools to get the motivation, right? And
very
momentum.
Much so. Yeah. And momentum. Exactly. I take a very strength-based approach to ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, you name it, to be able to optimize it. I feel like some of the most accomplished individuals have these traits because it forced them to look at things differently and think differently and learn differently and perform differently. And so, we have a brain quiz also where people take a 4-minute assessment and you can see your dominant brain type. And then we give for free, advice on how, kind of like personalized medicine based on a test like genetics, or personalized nutrition based on a microbiome test. This 4-minute assessment, which is online and also in the book, will give you how to read faster and improve your memory and so on based on your dominant brain type. Because everybody learns a little. It's not how smart you are or how smart your kids are. It's not how smart you are. It's how are you smart? And we all have genius. It's just your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual. It's not always user friendly.
Don't you wish that we had a brain manual a little bit? Or are you happy to kind of just make your own?
That's why I wrote Limitless, because I feel like if there's a book out there you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, I felt the moral obligation to write it. There's a scene where in The Matrix, Neo meets the all-knowing Oracle for the first time, and it's in her kitchen. She's baking cookies. And when Neo walks in the door, Keanu Reeves, there's a sign above the door I think most people miss, but it says, know thyself. I think a big part of this journey in life is having the curiosity to know yourself. And then the second part is having the courage to be yourself also as well. But part of knowing yourself is knowing your brain. I want people to know their brain, to love their brain, and most importantly, to use their brain.
Jim, quick question. Will you be sharing these 10 things on your summit?
We're going to bring in experts that are more qualified than me to talk about these individuals. Like we have the top sleep doctor in the world coming.
Yeah, Dr. Bruce.
Yeah, Dr. Michael
He was
Bruce.
A friend of our Successful with ADHD as well.
Oh, very nice. So
yeah, he's great.
Specifically, his topic will be for learning. I think the most important skill to master in the 21st century, bar none, is your ability to learn rapidly. An individual's ability to learn rapidly and translate that learning into action, is the ultimate competitive advantage. Because if you can learn how to learn, you can focus and concentrate, read better, understand, remember, implement, think clearer. What can you apply that to? Anything.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah,
I want to know, since these experts are going to be at your summit, instead of giving away the kitchen sink here, I would love for you to share some of your reading strategies, because top ADHD experts share that 45% of people with ADHD have a coexisting learning disability. And the majority is dyslexia. That's one of the top learning disabilities. So I know from reading your book many times that you have lots of speed reading strategies, and you also have like tricks, which I find fascinating, like the counting trick in between words.
Right. Oh, wow. You really went deep. I love this.
I told you, it's one of my favorite books. I also mentioned your book in my book, Activate Your ADHD Potential. Dr. Bruce is in it as well. But I really would love, that's the thing. Like, and I also just shared some of your strategies yesterday with my group, that you have to know why you're reading before you start reading, right? So I don't want to spill all the beans. Why don't you share your top reading strategies to help with decoding, with fluency, with comprehension? Because it's not only the dyslexia that might be coexisting with ADHD, but it's also the attention, right?
Very much so. So the art of learning and the art of reading is the art of attention. That alertness, your ability to sustain attention and concentrate, is very important in order to be able to absorb and understand, or much less retain, what you need to. Talking about Richard Branson, years ago, Richard wanted to meet somebody else that I knew, Stan Lee, who created a lot of Marvel superhero characters. And I'm very passionate around superheroes because I taught myself how to read by reading comic books. That's how, after 3 years of struggle, somebody in the family gifted me a comic book, and I would be underneath the covers reading the same comic book, and something about the illustrations brought the words to life, right? And I remember they wanted to meet each other, so I pick up Stan, and we're in the car going to dinner, and I had to ask him the question. I was like, you created all the amazing X-Men, Fantastic Four, Avengers. Who's your favorite? And he says, Jim, my favorite is Iron Man. And he said, Jim, who's your favorite superhero? And I posted this picture on Facebook and Instagram. He had a big, in the car, Spider-Man tie. And I said, Spider-Man. And without a pause, in Stan Lee's iconic voice, he goes, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And maybe because of my head injuries, I had 3 of them before age 12. I sometimes reverse things when I read and when I hear. And I heard something different. I was like, you're right, Stan, with great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When we take responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better. And I would start with always personal agency, that we have more influence and you control the controllables than we realize, right? And so when it comes to reading is one of the most important brain exercises you could do. Everybody wants to know what the fancy app is, and you could use our app or whatever. But I think reading is like to your mind what exercise is to your body. So coming from that framework of personal responsibility and the emphasis and importance of reading, I'll go through a couple strategies that if people want to read, a book. And I want to thank everyone who purchased Limitless. We've done a couple million copies sold, 40 different languages. We donated all the proceeds to charity.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Nonprofits that build schools in Ghana, Guatemala, Kenya, where there are no schools in that village. And also Alzheimer's research for women, in memory of my grandmother, who I lost to Alzheimer's when I was 7. And so
hard.
Anyone who knows somebody who has had dementia, she would call me by my father's name. I'd be very confused, or she would repeat something she just said 30 seconds ago. And I realized having good memory is not just about remembering facts, figures, foreign languages, formulas. It's about remembering these moments, right, of our loved ones in our lap and what we've learned and how we lived. But your memories are like the tapestry of your life. And when people lose that, they're a different person almost. And so we fund research for women because women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. Yet most of the research is done on men and treatments on men. And so in memory of my grandmother, but going back to reading, a few things that all of us could do for speed and comprehension. Number one, the reason why a lot of people aren't great readers, whether they have these traits or not, is we're not taught. Like, think about it. Reading is not a skill we're born with. We were taught it. But when's the last time you took a class called reading? I mean, Brooke, how old were you when you took a class called reading? Not like a college lit class, but like
No. I mean, only English language arts. And the last time I had an English language arts class, which isn't necessarily reading, was in high school.
Yeah. And most persons who took a reading class called reading, they were 5 or 6 years old. So the difficulty and demand has increased a lot, but how we read it is fundamentally the same. And so that growing gap is something called information anxiety. The markers are higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness, right? We're drowning. You buy books, they sit on your shelf, it becomes shelf help, not self-help, right? Like taking a sip of water out of a fire hose.
Yeah, it's like the graveyard of books
Right.
with just a bunch of dust that you need to blow off that you never look at.
Exactly. So I think starting there, knowing that it's not our fault if we're a slow reader or not understanding, because we weren't taught since we're 6, right? So part of it is upgrading those skills. The second thing that affects reading, as you mentioned, is focus. Now here's an interesting take on focus. People think if you, like, in our reading program, which is the best-selling reading program in the world, we triple on average reading speed with better comprehension. So essentially read something in 15 or 20 minutes that normally takes somebody an hour, right? And even if you could just double your reading speed, the average person reads 4 hours a day. I mean, you think about the journals, the research, the emails, the social media, whatever you're reading, 4 hours a day. That means if you double your reading speed, you can save 2 hours a day. I mean, just think about it from a productivity piece place, like 2 hours a day over the course of a year. Even if you save 1 hour a day over the course of a year, is 365 hours.
But if they listen to your book about turning off all of your distractions before reading the book, then they won't be reading 4 hours a day.
This is true. But if they save an hour a day, 365 hours divided by a 40-hour work week is more than 9 weeks. 2 months of productivity you get back saving just 1 hour a day on something ubiquitous like reading. But here's the thing, when we get this feedback from our students, if I ask you to read faster, or the person listening to read faster, what would they say would happen to their comprehension? Would they guess?
They would think it would have gone down because if they're reading faster, they're skimming and they're not retaining the information.
Yeah. And here's what our data shows is actually the fastest readers in our community tend to have better comprehension, not less, but better, enhanced comprehension because they have better focus. Let's say you're reading, you have this incredible supercomputer between your ears or your brain, but when you read, you feed it the supercomputer one word at
You've already lost me.
Right, exactly. So metaphorically, if I was to speak, and I'm from New York, and so we were talking about that before. If I was to talk that slowly, which I can't,
no.
First of all, this would be 5 hours long, and what would naturally happen after a few seconds? You
totally lose focus. I mean, ADHDers hate slow talkers. Let's be honest.
Exactly. So you'll think about other things. Your mind will wander. You'll fall asleep. But isn't it interesting? Those are the same symptoms that people have when they read. So if you don't give your brain, let me say it a different way. If you don't give your mind the stimulus it needs, it'll seek entertainment elsewhere, often in the form of distractions. It's like if you're going so slow, it's going to start distracting because you're feeding the input is too slow. It's like driving. If you're in your neighborhood and you're going
and
slow,
you're seeing 20,000 different stimuli, right?
Yeah, and you can pay attention to all this stuff. You could be thinking about the dry cleaning, drinking your Starbucks, trying to text or checking your makeup, whatever, because you're going slow. Your attention is split 5, 6 different ways, singing a song, whatever. But if you were racing a car, like F1, like on a racetrack, taking hairpin turns,
it's all you're thinking about is surviving.
You're focused on 2 things. You're focused on what's in front of you and the act of driving. Reading slow is like riding a bicycle really slow. You can't do it without wobbling and falling over. You need some kind of cadence and momentum.
Rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I would say is to get rid of that, before I give you a couple of tactics, is some people's mindset is, oh, if I read faster, then I won't understand it. And then you won't even use the method, right? And then the third obstacle, which you alluded to, is something called subvocalization. And we'll talk about that during this live complimentary summit. Subvocalization is that inner voice. You ever notice when you're reading something, you hear that inner voice inside your head reading along with you? And so the reason why it's an obstacle to you reading faster and better is because if you have to say all the words inside your mind in order to understand, you could only read as fast as you could speak. That means your reading speed is limited to your talking speed, but not your thinking speed.
Yeah.
And, whether somebody has ADD, ADHD or not, the thing is, well, anyone's going to get bored if the input is just too slow. And the question becomes, do you have to say the words inside your mind in order to understand them? Like we said, New York City. Do you have to say the words when you're reading New York City in your mind in order to understand them? And the answer is absolutely not. It's like seeing a stop sign, and nobody says to themselves stop every time they see that sign.
It's a visual.
Right. It's a symbol. A word is a symbol, and you don't have to say it by sound. So the idea here is if you reduce subvocalization, the need to say the words, you could read faster because nobody could talk that fast. You can't talk 3 times faster but you could think that fast.
Yes.
And then the last thing that gets in the way, besides lack of training, lack of focus, subvocalization, is something called regression. So regression, have you ever found yourself accidentally rereading words, or maybe reread the whole line?
Yeah, we need to go into this real quick. And I'm so sorry to interrupt you because what you have is gold, but this is more gold from what you share, right? Your 10 to 40 minute optimal focus time we need to share that with the world. I already share it with my community.
No, thank you.
Talk about the regression after 40 minutes of reading.
So there's something called the Pomodoro Technique, and the Pomodoro Technique says that after about 25 minutes, and it could be 10 minutes, 45 minutes, it's different for each person.
Sure.
There's a dip in focus and concentration. It gets harder and harder. And the idea here is you work for 25, 30 minutes, whatever that sweet spot is, and then you take a 5-minute, what I call a brain break, to reset, recover, right? And during that brain break, I recommend 3 things that are good for your brain. Number 1, move. We're sitting behind screens, most of us, all day. And as your body moves, your brain grooves. And it definitely can help people with ADD, ADHD. Sometimes they have an impetus to move in order to understand. And now in school, it's unfortunate because the methodology is sometimes making people sit still, or if they're doing certain things, don't let them have recess.
No, it's like the worst thing ever. You have a hyperactive child who is fitting into a box, and then you say, okay, let me get rid of your recess.
And there are individuals that need to move in order to understand. As your body moves, your brain grooves. So during that 5 minutes, I would recommend, they say sitting is the new smoking, is just to get out, ideally outside if you can. Nature is a wonderful way to kind of reset. So I move my body. Number 2, hydrate. Your brain, we have a podcast, we're almost 400 episodes in, 100 million downloads. We had somebody on there talking about Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who's a neuroscientist, nutritionist. He's saying that if you're just 2% dehydrated, it could significantly impact your cognitive health and your cognitive performance. And staying hydrated could boost your reaction time, your thinking speed, upwards of 30%. Just staying hydrated throughout the day. So during your brain break, make sure you hydrate, because your brain is 75 plus waters.
Yeah, I hear 80 sometimes, but yeah, 75, whatever. Jim, this is huge because, first of all, a lot of our community knows about the Pomodoro Technique, which is amazing, right? Because that's why they know about it, because it's a great technique. However, we also deal with not wanting to take the break because we're in that hyperfixation and we're afraid that we're not going to get back from it. And I know you're going to talk about that. But also, we forget to drink water because we don't want to stop doing what we're doing. So literally, we don't drink water. We don't take a bathroom break. We don't go outside, all the things that we need for our brain.
And sometimes when you're studying, you're reading, you're stressed, so you have very shallow breathing. And the lower 1/3 of your lungs actually absorbs 2/3 of the oxygen. And so you could go weeks without food. You could go a few days without water, but you can only go a few minutes without air. And so the third thing I would recommend during the brain break is do some breathing exercises, because a lot of times we fall asleep when we're reading because people are slumped over. And again, you're not getting the oxygen, so you get tired and fatigued easier.
Yes.
And so air,
It just
water,
reminded me.
movement, and all these are free, right? Movement, water, sunlight for your vitamin D, and so I think it's really important, even when we're looking at the rise of some of the numbers. And I know you've done a lot of research in this area. I mean, part of it is just more awareness. Some people are getting tested, so there's going to be an increase, in diagnosis, but there's also, over time, they've changed the diagnostic criteria.
Yep.
Even Dr. Amen, we had him on the podcast, and he speaks at our annual Brain Power Conference. He's saying there's like 6 or 7 different forms of ADD.
Yeah. 7 now in his new book. Yeah.
Depending on your and it requires different lifestyle and treatments. There's also environmental factors, right? That may also play a role, because your external world affects your internal world. Factors like increased screen time, changes in diet, and some neurochemicals that you can't even pronounce that are in some of your food, exposure to environmental toxins from even something ubiquitous like perfumes, or off-gassing from new furniture or new carpeting, mold, all these could have an effect and contribute
to the ADHD symptoms. Yeah. Increased symptoms. Yeah.
So, and then social and educational challenges, like modern day expectations, demands in social and educational settings could also exacerbate symptoms. High stress environments, academic pressure, increased digital distractions.
Yeah. Dr. Hallowell, you know who Dr. Hallowell is?
Yeah, we've had him on our show also as well.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love him. He talks about vast variable attention stimulus traits, and that everyone's attention span is shorter, right? Because of the digital distraction and the shorter, fast-paced technology, but it's not ADHD, right? However, we can still help people with shorter attention spans with your methodology.
Yeah, and a few things people could do are things we've talked about, like break tasks into smaller steps, small, simple steps, right? Large tasks can be overwhelming and confusing, and a confused mind doesn't do anything. So breaking inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's too hard. So breaking things down into smaller, manageable steps is easier to start, and it's easier to keep momentum. Using timers or schedules, where you're scheduling your time around your chronotype. Like Dr. Michael Bruce talks about your time types, and based on your biology and your hormonal expression, can also inform when you eat or when you sleep or when you check your email, right?
Yes.
So scheduling times when you're at your peak mentally, it's not always possible.
Yes. And we just re-released his episode last week. So
nice.
Before your episode comes out, the episode right before this will be Dr. Bruce.
Yes. So you can implement time management techniques like the Pomodoro Technique, 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute brain break. Set timers and schedule it, because if you don't schedule it, I find like we can't manage it. And then, manage your environment, because you want to Marie Kondo your mind. When you organize things, like even on your computer, everything's in the right file folder. Like it just, you
less
have
chaos.
Right. You have clarity of thought. And some people focus better with music in the background. Some people need noise canceling, headphones, clearing your desk of unnecessary items that could distract you, using apps to help, block social media or whatever. And then I think it's not just about time management for all of us. It's about priority management. The most important thing is to keep the most important thing, the most important thing. So what we'll talk about in the summit is things like the Eisenhower matrix, where you categorize tasks based on urgency and importance, but really focusing on the things. Then you can make a decision, what are you going to do? What are you going to delegate? What are you going to defer? What are you going to delete?
And this is really important for ADHDers, because our brains work where everything is equally important. So to take it out of your head and put it onto a matrix like the Eisenhower matrix helps us see it and get it out of our brain and onto paper, which is so helpful.
Yeah, even during the summit, we'll be doing certain physical exercises to help us to be present and focus. A whole science called educational kinesiology. It's like you could take something simple, your hand or your elbow, and touch and raise your opposite knee and go back and forth. Yeah, these brain balancing techniques like cross crawl or super brain yoga, where you're massaging your earlobe with your opposite hand and you're inhaling, squatting down, exhaling, coming up. It helps integrate your left and right brain and can get you in a physiological state to focus better, right?
Jim, real quick, I know your time is limited, and I pun intended, real quick. The biggest thing that I hear from ADHDers is I don't want to do the Pomodoro technique. I don't want to do 10
Right.
to 40 minutes because I don't know if I'm going to get this focus back.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, I mean, you talk about Stephen Kotler and of course the flow states, but can you talk about, like, you're in a flow state, right? And then you have to stop and
Yeah.
break.
So
What do we do about that?
Yeah. So the quote in my book Limitless that says life is letter C between B and D, where B is birth and D is death, C is choice. So we always make these choices. And one of the questions I ask myself throughout the day is this good for my brain or is this bad for my brain? And it becomes a filtering mechanism. So what I'm watching, or who I'm spending time with, what I'm consuming, what I'm drinking, is this going to be good for my brain or is it bad for my brain? Something really simple. Now, we do a whole chapter and we're going to do a whole session on flow states at the summit. And flow is a state where you feel your best and you perform your best. People call it like the zone. Whether you're a musician, you're an athlete, you're a student, you get in that place where 3 markers: you lose your sense of time, you lose your sense of self, and things become a little bit more effortless. Now, in order to get to that flow state, sometimes it takes more than 25 minutes. And so what I would say, going to the power of choice, is, ultimately we decide, right? These difficult times can diminish you. These difficult times can distract you, or these difficult times, they could develop you, right? We decide. And so sometimes I'll set, like I have if you're watching this on video, like literally Pomodoro.
A Pomodoro timer.
Yeah.
A real Pomodoro, folks.
This is from, I took this from our kitchen. It just has a timer on it. I set it for whatever amount of time and I focus. But that being said, if I am in a flow state, I will stay often in that flow state. But it's really, everybody uses their own judgment and choice based on, what their outcome happens to be. So for me, I've trained my attention through meditation, other exercises, deep work. One way of looking at it is your focus is like a muscle. It's use it or lose it. The challenge is often when we wake up, we flex our distraction muscles, right? We pick up our phone, every like, share, comment, ring, ping, ding, app notifications, just driving us to distraction. And how you do anything is often how you do everything. So we flex our distraction muscles. We wonder why we can't focus in school or on a Zoom call or with our kids or what have you. And so, even starting your day, and like what I do is I'll stay in bed, and I challenge everyone to do this tomorrow morning. So we have one of the top habits experts talking during this summit, talking about how to create new habits and break disempowering habits. And one of the rules are you want to first you create your habits, then your habits create you, right? One of the rules is controlling your environment, meaning you want to create an environment where it's easier to do the good things and it's harder to do the things that are not so good for you. And if touching your phone is an issue, I recommend you not touch your phone for the first 30 minutes of the day. Then it's easier to put your phone in the bathroom, right? So that one thing, it just makes it easier.
Get like a hatch alarm or like a rise
something
alarm,
like
right?
that. Exactly. So instead of grabbing my phone, what do? Is I stay in bed. I do this 2-minute exercise I would challenge everyone to do. When you wake up the next morning, close your eyes and like do this mental experiment. Fast forward to the end of the day and imagine somebody texts or emails you or calls you or your family member asks you, how was your day? And I want you to imagine you light up and today was amazing. Today was incredible. We crushed it today. And then ask yourself, what had to happen in order for me to feel that way? And I come up with 3 things personally and 3 things professionally. Like on my professional list was one of the 3 things was talking with you. I've been look forward to this conversation, and impacting the community, and inviting them to our free event.
You guys have to go.
Yeah. And
period.
So that's 6 things. And that becomes my focus. Cause like in In sports, you would know it's time to celebrate because the scoreboard shows you. But we don't have really set up a scoreboard for our days.
Mm-mm.
I mean, so I would challenge people, and they don't have to be big things, like on my personal side today, I was thinking, I want to take the dogs for a nice walk, and do that, or
Mm-hmm.
take the baby out on stroll, do that. And that's like a big, so that I know when I win.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the power of distractions and, you're getting into that flow state, we make these choices. And if I'm in flow writing, I won't stop, but I will. Here's a little brain hack. I'm working on my next book, and I will go in the flow. I will go beyond the 25 minutes if I'm coming up with great content. But here's the hack or the tip. And the hack has different connotations. I'll stop in the middle of a sentence, because when I pick it up again, I'll know exactly where to pick up, and I won't have writer's block. Right. So I'll write part of a sentence
Mind is
and I know
blown.
where I'm going. I know exactly where I'm going with this idea, but if I'm reaching a point where, I have to go out or run an errand or be with my family or whatever, then I'll stop. Even if I'm in flow, I'll stop halfway through the line, and then I'll pick it up when I create again, and I'll have instant momentum. Right. Because,
Wow.
I start, what am I doing? And
Jim, that just helped everyone, including myself, listening right now.
I'm glad.
My mind is blown.
Amazing. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to pour into your community at this event. Because I think a lot of people in your community, they're the people that a lot of times people go to, your friends, your family, there's an issue or work. But I feel like we don't have to make everyone happy. We don't have to fix every single thing. And part of self-care is taking time for you, right? You're the greatest project you're ever going to get to work on. So you have to take time and make time to create magic. And so but I think it starts with our mind, and you change your brain, you change your life, you change your brain, you change the entire world.
Absolutely. Guys, I know who's going to be speaking at Jim Kwik's Limitless Summit, and some of them have been friends of our podcast. So if you like our podcast, you've got to watch this free summit. Seriously, it is gold. My link is thelimitlesslearner.com/CWB, like my company.
Yeah, if you go there, and you'll see some of the experts. These are people I learned from their research and their mentorship. And we'll go 3 days, and it's going to be so practical, so powerful, and it'll be a lot of fun also as well. We're going to be doing like giveaways and a lot of amazing things. I'll be teaching speed reading, memory improvement, and we have some amazing experts coming in to talk about brain health and sleep optimization and changing your mindset and negative thoughts and so much more. But
oh my gosh. So make sure that you get your seat. I'm telling you, I learned so much from Jim and the research that he shares in his book, Limitless. I promise you, you're going to get so much value out of this summit. And like, I'm still learning as you're talking now. I mean, that writing technique that you mentioned, that's huge. And I made a distinction about the reading, which I'm not going to give away the kitchen sink here, but one of the tips that Jim has about reading and subvocalizing is almost like a secondary focus that you have for your first focus of reading with ADHD. And we love to pair things. So we remove the stimulus, like listening to a podcast while we're watching, or we're watching our kids or washing the dishes or doing the laundry. So I know that this is for everyone to expand their brain.
Yeah.
However, a lot of this is ADHD friendly. So please come and join. I'm going to put the limitlesslearner.com/CWB link in the show notes, and we're going to be posting it on our newsletter. And Jim, I can't thank you enough for coming on Successful with ADHD.
Brooke, I want to thank you so much for having me. I want to thank everyone who made it to the end of this conversation, and thinking about this journey
on 2X
together.
or 3X.
Right. Thinking about this journey, I believe that there's a version of ourselves that's patiently waiting. And I think the goal is we show up every single day for ourselves with some grit, but also some grace until we're introduced. And so it'll be a special gathering. I encourage people to actually, when they read it, they could actually post it online or take a screenshot saying they're joined, tag us both on social media so we get to see it. Yeah. And put a link there so your friends and your family, your followers, your fans could all benefit also as well, while spots are available. So
Yes,
I want to
thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you, guys. If Jim Kwik can do it with a broken brain, he literally had his brain break on a radiator. You can do it too. I'm telling you, these are so digestible. Jim, I could talk to you all day because I've been a huge fan forever. But thank you again for being on, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.